And we're here live at PAX East, joined with Karen and Cole, the developers of Pin City. The studio name is Studio217, right?
217.
Gotta have a 1,000 questions about that, right off the top.
Yeah, the minute I heard Studio 217, I had questions.
I said, there's a story there somewhere. There's a college dorm. There's something that led to that. But before we
PAX is still banging. I mean, we were blessed enough that they were able to sneak away. It looked like they had to call in a small army to man their area.
Yeah.
But it seems like anything VR today is popping.
Yep.
So
Pin City's booth, Peaky Blinders, Resolutions with Demio, anything that has the VR headset, I'm seeing.
I'm convinced
nonstop.
at this point you put a VR headset and you only have flat screen, they're still going to show up to your booth. But in this case, we have actual VR developers.
Yes, like I said, we have Karen and Cole, the developers of Pin City. So before we get too carried away, as you can tell, we talk a lot. So do you mind to introduce yourself for our listeners? Kind of tell them a little bit about who you two are and also the games you guys make with Studio 217.
Sure, so I'm Karen. We're just one of the co-founders. We do a little bit of everything each, so yeah, I'm Karen.
I'm Cole. I'm also a co-founder. We're the only co-founders in the studio.
So is it safe to say it's a studio of two?
Yes.
Okay.
Very accurate, yeah, very accurate. Yeah.
And, we were talking, we will get into Pin City, but this isn't your first VR game either, right? I think you guys were saying that you had worked on a game that was in preparation for the DK2, so you guys are OGs, but what's your history in the world of VR?
Yeah, I mean, we started out in college. Our thesis project was in VR. It was with the DK2, with the Leap Motion, and now it's the game called Mr. Mart. So we graduated and then pushed that game forward and released it. And then we saw how far we could go with it. And that was about 2016, 2017, 2018 era. Then all the tech upgraded and we decided, we should let this game rest. It's got too much history, too much legacy. It's a little messy of a project. It was our first real project. So a lot of mistakes were in there. And, with the tech being better, we wanted to focus on a more skill-driven game that was still silly and still had the bright colors and the goofiness that our first game had. And that's how we ended up with Pin City.
Yeah, I think a little bit of mistakes and errors is an understatement. That game, taking that game through basically every version of the Oculus headset that exists is a bit of a nightmare, and also all the versions of Unity. I think we started in Unity 4, and going through Leap Motion, all that stuff. So we learned a lot with that system, and we're much better developers now in terms of organization and just keeping track of everything and stuff. So we learned a lot, but it was a lot of fun too.
And I think I heard you say thesis, right? So was this a college project that has expanded and taken over from there?
So we we worked together for a thesis. We went to MICA, Maryland Institute College of Art, and so we were in the interactive arts major. And so for our thesis project, we developed the first version of Mr. Mart, which then we took to Indiecade, actually, and people kept asking us, what's your Twitter handle? What's your studio and stuff? And we were like, we don't have a studio. We were just working together. And then we were like, should we have a studio? And then, yeah.
So that leads to the $1 million question that we were joking about before. Studio 217. What's the name behind that?
217 is the number of the room of our studio for our major. Each major at the school had designated work areas, and ours was room 217, and we spent a lot of hours there, and a lot of very late nights, and on the cold concrete floors.
Yeah, I had instantly went to college dorm or something like that.
I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, I thought it would just be an address to somewhere, not necessarily a throw to the school where you got. So you went to school for programming, or was it for something else?
So MICA is a fine art school. So we did take some with a design program. So interactive arts is focusing on, or at least as it existed then, it's gone through a lot of changes. As it existed then, was focused on any sort of interactive art. So that included video games, but that also included robotics and tabletop games, exhibits, any sort of more experimental stuff. So it was very self-driven at the time. We had some classes in Unity, but we taught a lot of that ourselves. And it's the same way after college. It's just all self, just going through, teaching ourselves, learning from the internet, learning from other people.
I would say, I mean, we even started making 2D Flash games with like Hex Flixel.
Oh yeah.
And that's really how we started. The program really started with board games, and that was like our first Gameplay 1 class. Like, what makes a game fun? We're gonna start with cards, like literally a deck of cards, like make something fun with that, or make tic-tac-toe better, or make war better, and really starting with concepts, and then going into 2D games with Flash and something a little bit more simpler, and then eventually going into 3D and like experimenting with like alternative controllers with like Arduinos or like VR or like really exploratory. Like, you could explore a lot in that class. Yeah.
So although you are both college educated, the bulk of all this coming together was really self-taught?
I'd say the bulk of like the technological side was pretty self-taught, but we did have a lot of really good teachers.
Yeah.
There were like some dedicated teachers who we're still in contact with, some of them, that helped us with the tech side a lot. But I think the most important part was the like the conceptual aspects of game design, interaction, like what makes things fun, and also like critique, like learning how to take feedback on a game. Like, if people don't find it fun, don't get sad. Like, they're not being mean, they're being honest. Like, who are you making the game for if not for people?
Yeah.
You know, you want people to have fun.
I think that's that's an area that I don't think is actually discussed enough. It's one thing to come out and make a game, but we see a lot of struggles that developers will have with feeling obligated to engage in the discussions of their game when it's not positive, and then it can get very passionate as opposed to turning it over to a community manager and stepping aside from we'll say the social aspect. So it's actually good that they would teach how to deal with the negativity that could come, even if it is a good product. So that's pretty huge.
And what I love to see is, I mean, based off the time you guys were going to school, VR isn't as established as it is in 2023, which, still has a long way to go, but we've sold 20 million headsets with the Quest 2. It's a little different than in 2016. So, huge props to you for seeing a new avenue like VR and saying, full steam ahead on this one. And your philosophy on reworking classic games like War, how can we make tic-tac-toe better? I was watching some footage of your game Pin City, which, we'll get a little bit more into that, and it seems like that same concept. I saw your typical bowling game, but I saw some wonky elements too, I didn't quite understand what led to it, but it looked like somebody bowled and they went through almost like a slide, and they kind of zigzagged around and then hit the pin. So it's your standard game of bowling, but it sounds like that same thing you did with your previous things, card games, board games, of taking a classic game and making it even better. So kind of on that, do you two want to kind of talk a little bit about what the game you guys are showing today is, Pin City?
Yeah, it is Pin City, and it's just like literally just VR bowling with the spirit of mini golf. That is the tagline. It's easy to understand, easy to comprehend. We do enjoy bowling. We're not pros at it, but we love hearing from pros who play our game. Right now it's not released. It's in alpha. We do have a demo up on Steam. We're really just looking for more traction of people to play it and more interest and getting more feedback, right? Like, we do have a forum up with asking like specific questions about like favorite levels and like what did you hate? Like, we want to know all that kind of stuff. So today we have 8 demo levels set up. It's not the structure that the full game will be, but it's a little bit faster for the crowd of PAX East. Yeah.
And I just want to say more like in terms of like bringing the bowling to a different area. It's like it's like such a fun, simple concept. Like, we like bowling, and there already are bowling VR games that are good and like well done and like capture bowling pretty well. But like, if I leave the area of the bowling lane in those games, I can't really do anything. And if the game doesn't want me to throw overhand, the game doesn't want me to like bowl sideways into the wall and like crap like that. Like, we want to just like explore the possibilities of the space of VR. Like really try to take advantage of VR as a medium instead of just making just a normal bowling game.
Well, from what I have seen and just watching the demo that you guys have today, the potential for maybe in the future it'll be but the potential for a good social experience in VR seems to have it right on the money. Mm-hmm. It almost gave me a little bit of that walkabout vibe or for VR.
Yeah, any of the social highlights, the games that really...
But it's definitely bowling taken to the next level.
Yeah, and what's
Oh,
Sorry,
go
no,
ahead.
keep going.
I was curious about, I played a lot of VR bowling experiences. There's been struggles with the physics, with the ball releasing. I see you shaking your head. How are you able to overcome some of those obstacles that clearly other people have still
Struggled
to this day
with.
are still struggling and making better as they continue their game?
Well, I won't say we've totally overcome these issues either.
Well, I would say also like we because our game is not meant to be a simulation. We have the frame we give the game as a frame of something silly. Like we know we're not going to make the perfect physics setup. We're going to try to implement some sort of spin mechanic, but it's not going to be as perfect as real life. You know, you're not holding a real ball. You're not holding it in that form or however form like a pro might hold it. Like we cannot replicate that. I mean, with controllers or even with hand tracking, like that stuff's just it's always going to be finicky. And so that's why we kind of always lended ourselves to more silly games, more chaotic, and really focus on the level design and just getting the player feel to be like just enough, like just good enough to be enjoyable and not distracting from what we're trying to focus on. So like last year, a lot of people were saying like the ball is too light, like it's just way too light. I'm like, you're holding a controller, but let me see what we can do to help with like the psychology of it. How can we make the ball feel a little bit heavier? And this year we came back with an update that let you choose like between 3 weights of the ball, one being light, medium, and heavy, weights. But when you throw them and release, they do behave a little differently. And we found that a lot of people are using the heaviest ball that we have as an option, and that not many people are really complaining about it. And so we're almost at a point of like, oh, well, maybe now is the time we can add a little bit more spin. Maybe we could do different options of like maybe now this heavy ball is the new light ball, and like let people really experiment with what we give them. Yeah.
Is there an expectation of how many different, I don't want to say levels because they're not, but how many different bowling lanes per se or experiences you're going to have?
So we have been calling them levels, so you're fine. So the current structure, we're separating the levels. The levels are going to be 3 frames each, just to give people a little bit of a chance to experience the gimmick of the level and like understand it, but not too long to get like bogged down into a whole repetitiveness of it. We want it to still be fast paced. We're aiming for somewhere between like 50 to 80 levels, separated into like theme chunks of like themes based chapters, separated by like themes. The themes are going to be like mechanic based, so they'll be like we have like topology as one theme, and we've got like obstacles and other things like separated out into those sort of sections, and like we'll mix them together sometimes and hopefully have a nice flow of complexity and difficulty throughout the game.
That is a huge amount of levels.
I'm sure
I was actually
much more
in my
than
head,
you were
I'm like,
expecting.
12, 15 would probably be a lot to keep you busy, but that is an aggressive amount.
And
which certainly will keep VR gamers quite occupied. You're not going to speed run through, obviously, every single bowling level.
no, and obviously the game is still, you were kind of referencing there's still more to do. The game's not ready to be released today, but do you guys have an estimate of, when you would like to see the game, I guess, say, finally released,
For sale?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a really hard question for us. Like, ideally 1 year, but like that is really hopeful, right? Like, probably 2 minimum. To be really honest, I mean, this is honestly like our part-time thing. Like, we both have full-time jobs, and this is our passion project. Like, I'm literally on PTO to be here in Boston today, right? And I think I forgot to mention we're from Baltimore, Maryland, so like we had to travel quite a bit to get here and set up. So I would say like 2 years. Long answer.
Yeah, what you said.
No, 2 years.
2 years is a magic number, I think, in VR for putting out with the smaller studios. We've heard the larger studios can aggressively do it in a year, but 2 years is not.
Well, personally, to me, I hear that and I go, well, they have their head on right, because they're not trying to rush out a product just to say, oh, we need to get it out ASAP. You're being realistic about, hey, this amount of time we have in our day to dedicate to it. They're probably going to take 2 years. I'd rather hear that than say, oh, we're going to do our best for 6 months, but probably be buggy.
Be a little janky.
No, it's take the
for
time.
A year and a half.
I think the industry's only going to keep to grow. So I mean, come on. But in the meantime, in these next 2 years, if any of our listeners, anybody watching on video, they they see this, they hear this, they want to check out Pin City maybe a little bit earlier than before the public release. I think you're referencing that you guys have a Discord community or something like that for people to hop on. If somebody wants to check it out, how are they able to?
Yeah, we got a Discord. If you follow our usual socials, we have a Discord link up there. I will be honest with you, it's a pretty quiet Discord, and because it's just us two, and we don't have a community manager. But it's really just to have all of our fans come together, can get all the updates that they want in one place. So it's not like going through Twitter drama or like Facebook drama, things like that. So Discord's the place to be to get the alpha access, because right now we're on App Lab, but only for alpha channel. So I need emails from people that want to sign up. But you can go on Steam, look up Pin City. We did just release the demo up there, and both versions are pretty dang close, like almost identical. I will say they weren't built at the same night, but they're both out there. So it's built on OpenXR, so we can support the Quest 2. If you've got PCVR set up with Steam, so you can play with Vive, Index, your WMR headsets, what have you. So, and if it doesn't work, please yell at us. We'll try to fix it as soon as possible.
No, don't yell at them. Yeah. Don't yell at them. It's making me sad in a way when I see young, eager developers who are doing everything really the right way, but are still forced to not be able to do it in that full-time capacity.
Well, let's see after this release,
Well,
let's see
that's
where
what I'm
this goes.
hoping, because we've seen many. It started as 2, and today there's 7 or 8, even 12.
Yep.
Where are you finding the time, and how much time are you able to actually invest in this project?
We stay up late and forego other things.
Yeah. I also feel like we have like seasons of like development for us, like for like our personal like mental health sake. Like we tend to have PAX East we love, so we tend to come here as much as we can. MagFest is a really good one down in DC. That's like really where we started, like that Baltimore DC area. So we have a lot of part to owe to MagFest, and we try to go there too. So these are like 2 mainstay conventions. We always try to have something new at these conventions. So when we kind of work around these deadlines, that helps drive us to get more updates done, as well as like the community asking us for things. But I will say, like, once PAX is done, we kind of go into like a slumber mode to like rest, and we write down all the feedback, and then we come back with fresh eyes, and then we start to ramp up that workload again, and get more productive as the year goes on, the calendar year. So.
I think a good story for last PAX is I had some free time before last PAX, and so I just churned out a bunch of levels, just like sort of brainstorming them, and then Karen played them and was like, "Paul, none of these levels are good." And I put the headset on and I tried it. I was like, "Karen, you're right." And this was like a week before PAX. So then we just sat down and we're just like, "Okay, we need like 8 levels. That'll be good." And we just did the design work in one night and like got it done and finished it out, and we got some really good levels out of that.
Well, that goes back to the brutal honesty, like being able to take it. If you weren't brutally honest and you couldn't take it, you would have been going to the convention with bad levels. But being able to accurately react to the feedback, it's like, no, that's not, being mean, it's being honest. And
It's
you,
just
boom,
honest.
kick it into overdrive and get out a good product. I love to hear that.
So, is the end game for both of you, prying into your professional life again, is the end game for both of you, no pun intended, full-time studio, full-time game development, or do you think it's always going to be more of like a passion project?
Well, we definitely are wary of going full-time. Like, we like the comfort and the security of having like day jobs and stuff. But I think both of us would probably be happier if we were able to just be doing our own work full-time. But we also are wary of keeping creative control over our projects, because we're artists and like we like to keep it from our hearts and not from like profit,
Yeah.
But like that's such an idyllic viewpoint. We're in like a good place right now. It's exhausting, but it's also like really rewarding because we get to come to PAX and show off and make people happy and stuff. So ideally, yes, but we're also pragmatists.
You're very cautious, I would say. Very, very cautious.
I think that's a safe way to be, but then if it happens,
It's even better.
Yeah, even better.
Yeah.
You weren't even really asking for it, or.
And what I've noticed is the games that aren't chasing money end up being the best games. So that mentality, it's like, I think you're going to end up with a damn good product, and then you end up selling more games. You make more money than
Again,
if
from what I've seen, it looks like this has a lot of potential for fun.
Like we said, the booth is a hit. There's always a line, so we know we're stealing.
Oh, we keep walking by all day, and we're pushed to the back wall just to kind of see what's going on in there.
Yeah, so before we wrap things up, before we let you get back to the booth, do you want to let our listeners know one more time, where they can find you guys on social media, and then Stratus, if there's anything else you want to ask after too?
So our website is Studio217games.com, and our Twitter is @studio_217, and you can get to our Discord. I think we have links to our Discord on both of those places, and Discord is really the best way to reach us. You can DM us, you can hang out. Sometimes I'll say when we're working. I think I did that once so far. But that was fun because I got some feedback, people telling me about things that were bugs, and I was able to fix them at the same time. So if you reach out, we do respond. We're just bad at social media. We're developers, we're not social media people.
So
that's a real honest answer.
I love it. But nonetheless, we're joined with again Cole and Karen of Studio217.
Pull you out of your booth. We're sitting on the floor, as people can probably figure. We're not sitting in comfy seats.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just feels good to get off the feet all day,
Yeah. But no, thank you two again for joining us, and go crush it at your booth for the rest of the show. That was awesome.